here is, as you can see, is a jumble sentence, and whenever we have, more than 4 or 5 sentences, we panic when it's jumbled sentences. And top of it, if the sentences are too long, that's another stressful factor, right? But as always, looking at we don't need to get into a frenzy mode just because of the length of the jumble sentence, or how long it is. We don't have to decide its complexity based on the look and feel of the question, right? In fact, this might be one of the easiest sequences to unravel. You never know. So the objective, as always, for a jumble sentence is for us to identify the topic sentence, right? We look at clue words, keywords, and we figure out what the topic sentence is, and then we look for, obviously, keywords in those sentences which can help us form logical links, right? There are always, so some of the strategies that I've shared is look for repeat words and phrases, right? That's a good strategy to apply to form logical links. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to project the question. We're going to take a couple of seconds or maybe a minute, right? Try and identify what the topic sentence is, and if it's possible, if you're able to form a sequence. I know there are 7 sentences, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, there are 7 sentences. That's quite long. So we'll take about a minute or so to understand the context and see if we can form a logical sequence. If you're able to do that, you can feed in the sequence in the comment box. If not, let's start with the topic sentence, right? So I've given the question. Let's rule out what cannot be the topic sentence, and let's identify the topic sentence, shall we? Okay, so let's quickly address our first step, which is to identify the topic sentence, right? We at least have to get 1 mark correct, if not the whole sequence. And if you, what is, my next question to you is, what is the repeat word throughout the context? Are you able to identify any repeat word throughout the context? I'll give you a couple of seconds to tell me what is the repeat word. Investment, yes. Everywhere you see, it's either talking about, even if you look at A, I have investors, I have investment, right? That is the one repeat word which I see throughout the passage. You agree? Investment, different types of investment are mentioned here, right? So I have an idea that this context revolves around investment, right? I have that idea. Now, for those who said the topic sentence is B, let's read that sentence. It says, investments by foreign investors, including non-resident Indians, into these vehicles will no longer require FIPB approval. So my clue is these vehicles, which means these vehicles have already been discussed in a previous context, right? So B cannot be my topic sentence. What are these vehicles, right? I need to know. These vehicles have already been discussed earlier in the previous sentence. So obviously B cannot be my topic sentence, right? So let's rule that out. So those who said B, that's incorrect. And then some of you came back and said C. Let's read C. AIFs and other investment vehicles, if controlled or managed by Indian sponsors, will not be subject to sectorial caps on FDI or other restrictions with respect to their own portfolios. Now, this is a sentence which is giving me a lot of information, right? What are AIFs? Other investment vehicles. Other investment vehicles meaning there is some sort of investment vehicles being discussed earlier. AIFs and other investment vehicles, which means some investment vehicles have been discussed earlier. What are those? I don't know, right? So there has to be some previous context. So again, C cannot be my topic sentence. Then most of you came back and said F. Let's look at F. It says, in a quiet move that could have just as much impact on capital flows into India as the earlier announcements on foreign direct investment, the centre has recently announced sweeping relaxations in its regulatory regime for alternative investment funds, infrastructure investment trusts, and real estate investment trusts. Now, these are the vehicles, right? Alternative, infrastructure, real estate. So now it makes sense. So these investments vehicles are mentioned here, introducing what is happening around FDI, right? So obviously F has to be my topic sentence without any doubt, right? So have you got this clarity, guys? So B and C cannot be my topic sentence only because of what I have highlighted for you, right? Clear? Now let's look at a vehicle is something that transports or carries, is a medium through which something is happening, right? So when they say investment vehicles, we are talking about the different types of investments here. That's what it means. Now let's go back. So F is our topic sentence. Now that we have established that yes boss, this context is about investments and it's mentioned these, and pay attention to the different types of investment vehicles that I've mentioned. I highlighted that as well, right? Alternative investment funds, infrastructure investment funds, real estate investment funds. Now you tell me what can be the next logical sequence after F. So I have already highlighted clue words for you. You need to tell me what is the most logical sequence after F. Some of you, the ones who said D, right? Most of you have come back and said D. Let's address that. It says this relaxation. Pay attention to that. That's your clue phrase. In F, is there any relaxation being mentioned? In F, is it addressing any relaxation at all? Is my question. No, it is not. So how can D follow F? But what is being mentioned in F is the vehicles, the different types of vehicles, alternative investment funds, infrastructure investment trusts, real estate investment trusts. And where is that being spoken of? In B. Investments by foreign investors, including non-resident Indians, into these vehicles. Which vehicles? These vehicles, real estate, infrastructure, alternative investment funds, will no longer require FIPB approval. So yes, B is the right sequence to follow, right? I already highlighted this for you. These vehicles. Got it? So D cannot follow. Now FB. So we have our link. Now what can be the next obvious link? I want you to apply a little bit of logic here, right? If investments by foreign investors, including non-resident Indians, into these vehicles will no longer require FIPB approval. So that's something that does not require FIPB approval. What can it mean? Let's look at what can be, because see, if you look at C is talking about, it's giving me additional information saying it's referring to restrictions, sectorial caps. And it is, yes, it's addressing AIFs and other investment vehicles, no doubt. Think, if something does not require approval, isn't that a relief? If something does not require an approval, isn't that a relief? So, if it's a relief, then I am relaxed. Then what can be the next sequence after FB? FBD. Yes, if I don't require approval, if I don't have to go through a procedure, that causes me a relief. That is relaxing for me. I don't have to break my head. This relaxation should allow PVVC funds, infrastructure funds and REITs with an Indian exposure to tap into a much larger pool of global risk capital without procedural delays. FBD, yes, without procedural delays, right? So for me, my clue word is, so because I don't require the FIPB approval, that is a relaxation to know that, right? That is a relief to know. And this allows India, a much larger pool of Indian exposure to tap into a much larger pool of global risk capital without procedural delays. Now, procedural delays being the clue word, yeah? Is there a sentence that is talking about some sort of a procedural delay? Which sentence is that? Think. A talks about procedural issues. I'm asking you, is there a sentence that is giving me an example of what sort of procedural delays can be? See, please understand, D is not addressing these investors. Yeah, without, yes. If you look at AIFs, it says AIFs and other investment vehicles, if controlled or managed by Indian sponsors, right? This is the reason why the delay comes in the first place, will not be subject to sectorial caps on FDI or other restrictions with respect to their own portfolios. How can the delays happen? The reason behind the delays happening is if the Indian sponsors control or manage them, where they go ahead and give them a cap on foreign direct investment, or they come up with other restrictions. That's when procedural delays will happen. right? So FBDC, right? Now, see, I am introduced to something called sectorial caps on FDI and other restrictions. Look for repeat words and phrases. After C, is there a sentence addressing the sectorial FDI caps? Which is that sentence? After C, which is the sentence that is addressing FDI sectorial caps? E, right? Yes. So it says this is significant as bypassing sectorial FDI caps can prompt a sizable number of foreign investors to take the AIF route to explore promising sunrise sectors, be it multi-brand retail, e-commerce, or even microfinance. Yes, that is correct. So those who got that, you're good to go. And then what do we have? In E, it takes the AIF route to explore promising sunrise sectors. AIF route is our clue word again. So what should follow? What is addressing AIFs? Repeat word and phrases again. Between A and G, what would it be? AIFs is addressed in, read the entire sentence, G or A. Clear definitions have also been put in place on what would constitute India-sponsored AIFs. So if you look at E, it says, this is telling you a significant thing, right? It's saying, it's a positive thing, right? This is significant as bypassing sectoral FDI caps and prompt a sizable number of foreign investors to take the AIF route to explore promising sunrise sectors, be it some of the sectors that are mentioned is multi-brand retail, e-commerce, and even microfinance. And keep in mind also this clue word, right? Clear definitions have also been put in place on what would constitute India-sponsored AIFs. So in the AIF route, not only are these sectors going to be explored, but also keeping in line with what else is happening around AIFs is mentioned in G, right? So if you look at it, in terms of repeat words and phrases, the definite links are EG, where your clue is AIF. The definite link between C and E, right? These two are definite links. CE, because I have sectorial caps on FDI, which is the repeat word and phrases. So I'm just going to put the links here. So, in case you say, hey, how come this and this are connected, right? EG, AIF link. CE, sectorial caps link, right? On FDI. That's the link, right? DC, we're only talking about how in terms of procedural delays are mentioned, right? And this relaxation we already said, right? That comes from the fact from B, because if something does not require an approval, that is a relief, and that is the relaxation that it brings. So FB, D, C, E, J, and the only one left is A. What does A say? While this, so both E and G are giving me positive things. So it's saying while this may help resolve some vexatious procedural issues plaguing these investors, some clarity on aspects of taxation such as the applicability of withholding tax to exempt investors is required. So A is more like a probable solution. It's saying, hey boss, I understand that you're telling me this is possible, these are all positive things that can happen. However, please keep in mind that we need some more clarity on aspects of taxation, such as, given the example, that is something that is required, that is something that we need to keep in mind. So A is almost like a closing sentence culminating the entire sequence, saying, okay, this is what the context is. I understand these are some of the things, these are some of the sectors we want to address, these are some of the promising things that are happening. However, this is something that we need to keep in mind as a final, look into factor, right? So the entire sequence is, so those who, some of you came back and said AG, no, after E, but that's not the case. So couple of you got the entire sequence except for the last two, which got mixed up, but for the most part our complete and correct sequence is F, B, D, C, E, G, A. I'm going to write this down here again. F, B, D, C, E, G, A. Yeah. So when you follow this, go back, look at logical sequence, try and analyze aspects. I know some of you have gone completely with, repeat words and phrases, and you've got some sequences incorrectly, but please go through the entire sentence to understand the context in its complete meaning. Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to go through what we just completed, and if you have any doubts, if you have any clarifications, you can post it. Let's brainstorm a little more if you need clarity. Okay, seems like nobody has any doubts, but I'm sure most of you find this very complicated, like I said, because of the length of the thing. But okay, so most of you are coming back and say, how come C follows D? Let's quickly look at that. Right, for some of you it might be clear, but I totally understand if some of you didn't get that. So let's go back and just address that bit. How come some of you feel, how come C follows D? Is that the question? Let me understand. How come E follows C? Right, for C and E, I said that the repeat word is sectorial caps on FDI, very clearly mentioned. Right, it addresses that. If you look at C, something that will not be subject to sectorial caps on FDI. In fact, C introduces that, right? And E takes that up again. This is significant because the Indian sponsors, even though they control and manage it, are not subject to sectorial caps, and E is giving me the benefit of why bypassing sectorial FDI caps. What can it do? What advantage is there by doing that, right? E brings in that aspect. It says this is significant as bypassing sectorial FDI caps can prompt a sizable number of, so it's giving you the benefit of doing that, right? So that's why C and E are a link. So E has to follow C. Then somebody said, how come C follows D, right? You look at D, it addresses again procedural delays, right? See, I'm sure you understand why D follows B, because B talks about something that does not require approval. I'm relaxed, I don't have to break my head. So that's why this relaxation addresses that. C following D is only because C is very clearly telling you what can be the possible procedural delays, right? How can one face these delays? C explains that very clearly. It says this is how procedural delays can come into play. 1, restrictions, whatever restrictions. 2, sectorial caps on FDI. So when the sponsors are controlling and managing you, right? And when these two happen, obviously they're going to be, always remember, if there is a restriction, which means something that is not allowing you to move forward, something that is causing you some sort of a delay, right? What is the meaning of restriction? A restriction means something that is hampering you moving forward, right? Something that is stopping you from going forward. And that obviously will cause a delay, right? Just logical connect there. And that's why C follows D. Yeah, so like I said, guys, I totally get what you're saying. All of us are at different levels of capturing information and understanding concepts, right? So just by this one time, you may not follow it. You may have to listen to it one more time. So please do that. I'm sure it will make logical sense for you. Yeah.